media students, in this video I'm going to be talking you through how to analyse an unseen newspaper front page. So if you see an unseen newspaper front page in the exam, it will be in section A and it will be a 15 marker, and we're going to use this question for today. Explore how media language communicates viewpoints and ideologies on this front page of the Daily Mirror, which was from the 2024 paper. When you get an unseen newspaper front page, it's really important, rather than just focusing in on the Daily Mirror and the Times, that you actually have an awareness of all of the national newspaper brands and their political leanings, also what demographic they are aiming at. So are they aiming at sort of more educated ABC1 type of people, or C2DE, more sort of working class people? It's really important to sort of have that background knowledge, because when you are faced with that newspaper front page, you can use that to sort of add in additional context. So once you've kind of understood the different newspapers and what they're offering, obviously then once you get the unseen in front of you, you already have a little bit of background knowledge, which will be really useful. In terms of this front page that we're looking at today, when you're looking at this question, again, thinking about the how far element, so this question is asking us to explore. So we need to think, okay, the media language that's been used, how far are viewpoints and ideologies sort of magnified, which means increased, exposed, made really obvious? And are the viewpoints and ideologies that are being constructed on certain issues positive or negative? I've said in a previous video, but with newspapers, Levi-Strauss's binary oppositions theory is a really useful one to consider. It might not always apply to a front page that you may or may not get, but more often than not, that is what newspapers are trying to do, especially tabloid newspapers, is they're creating binary oppositions. If you had a unseen front page from the Times, which is a bit more centre, it's broadsheet, it won't necessarily sort of lend itself to that theory, but it's something to sort of bear in mind. Now, in terms of the front page that we're looking at today, when you're planning, the first thing you want to be doing is feature spotting. And once you start to sort of spot those features, bearing in mind that front page that is printed off for you is yours to annotate and draw all over, so please make sure you do that in the exam. Once you sort of start maybe feature spotting actually on the page itself, I would then start to be grouping the features based on trends that you're noticing. So you can see where I've come up with some topic sentences which will eventually form to create my introduction, which again can be really short and concise because it's a 15 marker, but I want to make really clear what I'm trying to argue about the viewpoints and ideologies that are being projected on this front page. So paragraph 1, some of the features that I started to notice all kind of blended together to show that this is a very populist newspaper. If something is populist, it just means you're tending to be opposed to the elite, those in society with huge amounts of power, and you tend to champion the cause of ordinary, everyday, working class people that don't often get the limelight in the media. So the Daily Mirror is a populist newspaper. So my main argument here, my topic sentence, is that they aim to sympathise and advocate for, advocate meaning act on behalf of, the working class to kind of raise their sort of concerns. So that is the viewpoint that is being projected. And here are a few ways that I think the newspaper is doing that. So firstly, you've got the Daily Mirror's tagline, the heart of Britain. Consider the implications of that. Their heart is for the British people. They care about the British people. They are seen to understand the struggles of the British people. It's then really interesting that you've got the inclusion of King Charles, obviously linked in to the Pride of Britain Awards. So this idea again of like championing British people. Also, if you look on the page with the different people sort of further down, the images of the public are actually larger than Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. So again, it's kind of amplifying and magnifying working class people and showing support for ordinary everyday people by putting them front and centre. Another range of sort of features that I kind of spotted is the standalone story at the top, so the Pride of Britain Awards. You've got a member of the public, Alex Anderson. You could obviously analyse the fact that he's wearing a bow tie, that he's kind of invited to this really prestigious event as an ordinary member of the public. And in terms of context, hopefully people will have an awareness of what the awards are aiming to do is to celebrate ordinary people, and the Daily Mirror obviously support the Pride of Britain Awards and are tied to it. The fact that it talks about the TV primetime slot, 8 p.m, and then you've got Idris Elba as well, sort of selected in that photo, and the fact that he's got a real mainstream but also quite cult following, and he is almost seen as like a champion of the people, someone that's really popular with the British public. So all of these features combined are aiming to sympathise with the working class, advocate for them, and even talking about the cost of living crisis is identifying what people are struggling with. So you could kind of link that into the images of the public. They're kind of everyday shoppers who are struggling to make ends meet. Okay, for the second paragraph, that's sort of one half of the binary opposition. The second half of the binary opposition is, again, looking at my topic sentence, intended to sort of critique Rishi Sunak, critique the Conservatives, and launch a scathing attack. So I've kind of put up here that when you're analysing newspaper front pages, it would actually be a really good idea to learn some vocab and a range of vocab that kind of identifies what newspapers are doing. So newspapers often, especially tabloid papers, when they're covering a story on the opposition party that they don't support, tend to be very harsh. So rather than just saying in your answer, it's very harsh, having some different ways of phrasing it can be really helpful. So scathing just meaning very harsh, words like disparaging meaning criticising. So almost learning synonyms for these different words to show how one paper may be attacking the opposition party. So there's a binary opposition created to critique Rishi and launch a scathing attack. If you look at the framing of him, I would argue it's really claustrophobic. You've obviously got the signifier of number 10 behind him, but he feels really enclosed. He feels quite small. He feels like he's not able to cope with the issues in comparison to, you know, all the things going on around him. The Stand first, also in the article, mentions the fact that he is a millionaire. So that, again, has been selected on purpose to highlight that he is really out of touch with ordinary people. So then you've got this binary opposition of him being a millionaire, so he's, in a sense, has he ever really struggled, versus people that are struggling with the cost of living. So it creates this sort of him versus us, or him versus them, binary opposite. It makes him seem like it's out of touch, and this is further enforced by the mention of old cronies. Again, cronies sort of being quite a negative word to describe a group of people that are sort of like your insiders, almost like the Conservatives haven't branched out, haven't tried to make ordinary people part of their party. They're used to sort of the old elite upper class cronies forming their inner circle. And it also mentions old faces as well in his cabinet. So there's not, you know, a mistake there. They are deliberately saying old, repeating those lexis, because they want to amplify the fact that he is not changing his ways and he's not connecting with the working class. If you look at the headline, the fact that it talks about the real world and real as in yellow, think about the signification of yellow, the fact that there's danger involved, and there's danger potentially with him not actually engaging with the working classes. You've also got the jump line as well. So obviously when you're looking at newspaper front pages, it's really important that you know your newspaper terminology so you can identify all these different things and be able to correctly name them. So the jump line is when it says turn to pages 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And I think sometimes if you notice the jump line has lots of pages listed, that really highlights the significance of the story, because obviously they're wanting to cover it in a large proportion of the newspaper. So bear that in mind as well. So once I've listed my features, I would then try and link in my theory, but I've kind of already decided that because it's a tabloid newspaper front page, it lends itself to Levi Strauss. So I'm going to include Strauss within my answer and also in my intro. And because I've kind of got my topic sentences already, I'm just going to merge them together in my introduction to form my big idea. So binary opposites are used to communicate viewpoints and ideologies of the Daily Mirror, that they are amplifying working class issues, so the cost of living crisis, and they are launching a scathing attack on the Prime Minister. And the fact that you've got that binary opposition, Levi Strauss would argue, binary oppositions are always trying to reveal a deeper message, or what he calls an ideological significance. So if you think of a film, if the good guy is winning, think about why. What is that showing about society? What does that good guy represent? Does the good guy represent morality? Does the good guy represent sort of respect for marginalised groups? So there's always a reason why there's a huge sort of contrast being created. And obviously the ideological significance here is the Daily Mirror are always in support of the Labour Party. So they are trying to amplify the working class, which is what they believe the Labour Party does. And they want to launch a scathing attack on Rishi Sunak because they want to, again, sort of show their ideology that he is not suitable for the job. So just as a recap, look at the question, have an understanding of newspaper context, decide on your features and try to start linking them together. It's not the end of the world if you just kind of do it a little bit more higgledy-piggledy, but it just makes more sense to think a bit more carefully about how you're structuring your answer and grouping your ideas. So once you've grouped them, you can then create your topic sentences, which then help to form your intro, and we already decided on the theory. So all of that being said, that should be a really useful plan for you to then go on and write. And if you want to have a go at writing up that plan, again, writing up plans, not just always planning answers, is another really useful revision strategy.